Audio Content Lab.
Imagine you're in a theater, seeing a legacy franchise movie. Could be Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, Lord of the Rings, or James Bond. The lights dim and the music starts playing. From the very first moment that the soundtrack hits you, the emotional connection, the history, the scope and scale of the movie is locked into your experience and sets the tone for the rest of the encounter. Music, particularly as it's used in entertainment, is so much more than a rearrangement of 12 notes. It's an emotional companion. It's the fourth wall broken down. It's a cognitive roller coaster which sends you through the peaks and valleys of reaction. So when it comes to music and marketing and sonic branding, the same cinematic experience we have with audio in movies is at work on the small screens of our lives. But how does a brand become linked to a sound? How does an audio agency help create and sell the emotional experience of music back to a brand? This episode will explain and unpack the magic of marketing and music, and hopefully leave you inspired about the many possible applications and experiences that sonic branding can bring to your marketing mix. So, let's get to it.
Sounds like
Marketing.
It sounds like marketing.
Welcome to Sounds Like Marketing, the audio content marketing podcast that's here to dial businesses and brands into the importance of sound. I'm Jake Sanders. I'm joined by Paul Julius, as usual. You're always here, aren't you, Paul?
Usually.
God willing. Well, great. This is a wonderful episode today. Tons of awesome insights headed our way about sonic branding. So we figured we'd start with an article from InsideRadio.com, and the title of that is "Sonic Branding is Becoming More Prevalent as Brands Focus on Their Sonic Identity." And just start with this opening paragraph. More and more brands are recognizing the importance of sonic branding in their marketing strategies, according to AMP, a full-service agency devoted to sonic branding. Of 94 brands with a sonic logo, 19 are featured in the top 25, ranking in its fourth annual Best Audio Brands 2022 report. So it's oddly enough, we have the founder of AMP, this sonic branding agency, on the podcast. Michele's joining us, and he has awesome stories. And he speaks on this article. The topics here is kind of the prevalence of sonic branding, but also some of the barriers that marketers and agencies are discovering with music and using that as part of your marketing mix. So I have a hot take, but Paul, do you want to start off here and kind of share your reflections on this article?
Yeah, absolutely. So for a quick definition, just to make sure we're all on the same page here, sonic branding, sometimes called audio branding, sound branding, or acoustic branding, is the practice of using auditory elements to brand your product or service. So as we get into later, and I think this is important, it's more than just a jingle or a theme song, or, purchasing the rights to a pop song and, aligning your brand with it. Like that's part of it. But the landscape is larger. And like the article says, 75% of the top 25 brands analyzed in the report utilize a sonic logo, with an increasing number of them sharing their efforts across digital channels, which is big also because I think companies and brands are starting to realize there's a lot of opportunity there. Like voice search, things like Alexa, Google Assistant, even when like apps open or close, or, like when your Xbox starts up or PlayStation.
Oh yeah.
As we learned later from Michele, the like point of sale, there's all kinds of stuff where, it's a much larger landscape. Really. And I think these are spaces that are going to start to be explored, more fully with the sound.
Right.
And again, in the article, it says brands like Apple and Nintendo, both of which benefit from a, quote, robust 360-degree sonic strategy through their exploitation of numerous touch points across highly immersive user experiences. We can
buzzword alert. Buzzword alert.
Let's swim through the marketing speak there. That's what I'm talking about. I think there's a lot of these. They're starting to realize, aha, in the early days of the internet, it was just autoplay, right? You'd get on somebody's website and sometimes it would like, like in MySpace, it would like start playing, music or videos would play. And I think that put people off a bit, but brands are starting to realize that there is a way to utilize these opportunities,
Right.
to create some kind of connection, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what did you think? So, I mean, are we starting to poke at the right part of this thing here?
I think we are. I mean, you hint at an aspect that Michaela touches on later, is that one of the things that sonic branding is they're saying it's prevalent, but look around. There is a dearth of jingles and sonic brands, and it's only seems to be reserved for big players like insurance companies, Nintendo, like Apple. Like most
Yeah.
marketing teams are not considering themselves like major players. So it seems like sonic branding, when it used to be something very prevalent, your local hardware store, has a jingle. And I mean, if it's Ace is the place. But no, there was so many more opportunities for placements of sonic brands back in the day when they were doing commercials, TV, radio. It's just a natural medium for those things to happen. Now with the proliferation of digital advertising and all these different places, you can have 100 different ads running at the same time. It almost sort of curtails the thought that there should be a cohesive strategy to applying all those things and saying, 50 of those ads are direct kind of response, 25 of those ads are sort of top funnel stuff, and 25 of the other ads are just, social media, random organic traffic, so why would I even put a jingle on there, and what you point out is there's so many, just with that proliferation, there's actually more opportunities for a sonic brand to make your marketing differentiated. And one of the things that hit me is that most marketers and agencies will battle endlessly about headlines, copy, color, these other things, like, are those the right words? And really, words have so much existential meaning, like they are defined in different ways. When music hits you, it is the thing. Like, it is the emotional response. Emotions just happen with music. With any other mode of communication, there are conscious considerations being made by an audience that just don't happen when music is playing. And maybe this is why more marketers are ignoring music, because it just works or it doesn't. I think most people are saying, I'd like to, talk about this headline endlessly and deconstruct all of these words, when you can't really do that with music. It either slaps or it doesn't. And, Michaela says later, he's like, it's music, man. Like, that's one of his responses to, why these things work and, how you can get to them. It's this art form. And marketing is, we love to say it's a little bit of science, it's a little bit of art. Most people are very scientifically and empirically up their own buttholes to try and find the right, bit of copy or some clever little meme that they can play with, when they're ignoring the like deep subconscious levels that music attaches itself to a brain. I think, like, I don't want to play with that because it either works or it doesn't. And, I can argue endlessly about a tagline, so I think, sonic branding is sort of, it doesn't look good on the checklist mentality for most marketers, because it's a bit out of the box. It's extremely emotionally driven. There is more art than science there. So a lot of people are just like, forget that, man. Like, I would rather just, get lost in HubSpot attribution funnels and just pretend that is the business of marketing. Whereas you could make a jingle and hit a bunch of people. 1-877 cars for kids. Holy crap. I have no idea what's going on there. Do they give the cars to kids? Are kids driving the cars? We have no idea. But
all I know is I'm irrationally angry right now.
Yes.
That you mentioned that.
And you're hearing that line.
Yeah.
And whatever it is, that is a a direct path into your brain, like it or lump it. That
Yeah.
earworm is digging into your soil, and it's going to create fertile ground. And it's odd that, we say that sonic branding is prevalent, but I just don't think a lot of garden variety marketers are playing with it.
I think you're right. I was going to ask you that. Like, do you think it's just because of the nature of it? Like, so much stuff is taught, using the like Mad Men, kind of agency model where people are putting together these visual, magazine ads, or
Mm-hmm.
we're putting together a website or these different pages, or it's a
Mm-hmm.
squeeze page or a blog post.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of unknown, right? And
Right.
like you said earlier, um, music, there's no headline. If you're listening to classical music, there's no words even.
Nope.
Um, it's just a different thing. Like, how do you A/B test that?
Right.
And Michele does.
And
Like,
go
that's pretty cool.
and he tells you how to create trackable, measurable things that you can put in your marketing reports and say, hey, this jingle is having this effect. And
Mm,
that's where I think the marriage comes in, where the new sonic brand strategists are very conscious about marketing and what you need to report back to clients. And it's a bit of that Mad Men thing, but one of the heroes of that show is Don Draper, and he shows up with a deep emotional, subconscious Freudian connection,
mm,
that always goes beyond all the, minutia of what they're talking about. So music is one of those Don Draper things that just shows
mm.
up. And I think a lot of maybe marketers don't want to be outshined by that. And they want to say, no, no, it's really in this strict measurability, this attribution model, like this is going to be the way to do it. And I don't think it's an either or scenario. I think it's a bit of both. And the interview with Michele, who has been doing this for, decades, just recently finished doing something with BMW and global rap stars. Like, there was a reason BMW threw that cash and said, make this look great. Make
Yeah.
us look great. Make us sound great. Make the product sound good. He just recently did something with Porsche and the sound of their doors. And another guest on our show, Ethan Decker, was going off about the subconscious things that attach us to a brand, and music is one of those things. And that's why it's great to have one of the leaders in this industry on the show, dropping science, and giving us a bunch to think about and a bunch to fill our ears with, about the strategic implications of marketing and music.
Yeah. We should fill our ears with that right now.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Michele Arnese is the founder and CEO of AMP Sound Branding, a full-service agency that specializes in sound branding and audible brand communication. Michele has almost 2 decades of experience in sonic branding, working as a consultant and a guest professor, and has worked with some of the biggest names in business, including Porsche, MasterCard, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW, to name a few. And he's here today to talk about sonic branding and audio marketing. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you for returning our LinkedIn message. It's surprising, the power of social media. So let's start with a bio of your work in sound. Where did this passion come from, and when did you realize you could make a career out of it?
Well, it's interesting because this is not my where I started working. So I'm coming from an experience as a management consultant. And I studied also music, but I was just doing music, playing music, playing with bands and doing this kind of stuff. But in the meantime, I was working as a management consultant, so very serious stuff.
Right.
Traveling around and consulting big companies in Europe, across Europe. And then at one point I realized in some conversation I had that the music and the time for music was just going away because I was completely busy with my job and it was getting more and more.
Right.
And that time was 2008. At that time, sonic branding was basically at the very beginning, right? So I thought if there is a way, and I cannot be a professional pianist anymore in my life, if there is a way to keep music in my life, probably it will be doing something that maybe has to do with my left and right brain together instead
Right.
of just going left or right. And
Right.
then I explored with my former partner the opportunity in sonic branding, which is something that was very new at that time. I
Mhm.
quit my job. I quit my job.
Nice.
I had a child. I started a new business, and you can imagine was really a couple of crazy months figuring out. I have a lot to say to the brands out there because I have an understanding of music. I can talk to CEOs, right?
Right.
And how can I bring this into a company?
Right.
I don't know. I did the company. So I founded AMP in 2009, and then we started working with some brands here and there, creating the idea of a sonic identity. So we are not a typical music production that comes from the music production experience and said, okay, at one point we want to do something more cool. Let's do something strategic. Let's call it sonic branding or whatever. And we are not like an advertising agency claiming to do some audio work.
Mm.
We are born with the idea to create sonic identities. This is our passion, to create something that, the brands, some of our clients, they don't have before. So you
Right.
create something completely new for an identity of global brands. And this is what makes us really, what drives us still today. So this
That
is where it started.
that is amazing. And so, talk to us maybe about some of those initial clients. Like, was it where'd you find them, and then was it kind of like pushing a boulder up a hill? Like, if they don't have a sonic brand identity, maybe they have more of a marketing sensibility that you sort of plucked on, or like, what was those initial clients like? What was the kind of passage
One
into?
one our first global client was a B2B client, was Linde Gas, is the worldwide leading company for industrial gases, healthcare gases, and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
And this is because the headquarters is in front of my street. So I was just walking by. I was talking to my partner and said, this could be an incredible client. He said, why? They are all like engineers. They do like, amazing technical stuff. But
Mhm.
I said, yeah, this is what they miss, basically. They miss a little bit emotion. They just relaunched their identity. And he said, wait, I think I've wrote the music for someone who knows someone. So we just presented at Linde, and we have been very lucky to find the head of communication and branding. She is a violinist, so a violin player,
Nice.
and she understood exactly what we want to do. And she said, look guys, we have a big worldwide meeting with 500 top executives from all over the world, and we would like to reveal our sonic identity at this meeting. The meeting was on a boat on a river in Germany, in a theater,
Wow.
and we composed a symphony. And this idea was great because the symphony was composed like really a real symphony. It was 30 minutes of music divided into 4 chapters, and each chapter told the story of Linde from 1780 something to today.
What?
So we created this amazing piece of music. We recorded with an orchestra. We went to the boat in the theater. We unveiled the entire thing with a great show. And then she went on stage and said to the CEO, by the way, what you just heard, this is our sonic identity.
What?
And everybody was completely surprised about that. And we got people from China coming to us and say, guys, how did you have this idea to create sound for us? We are so dry and so technical and so,
Right.
but we are all engineers. We all listen to music privately. We are lovers. We are music lovers. So
Wow.
with the internal communication program where we associated the music with, you just hit exactly our emotions. And for me was the real moment where I understood, okay, this could be a business. And then we started from there, and we won also a couple of awards with this work. So it was like the beginning of a less risky journey, something that told me, okay, maybe this is something that can work in the next couple of years.
Wow. Oh, that is so amazing. And so um I kind of want to unpack that too, in like when you're approaching creating a sonic identity, do you create a bigger piece like that? Like here you have your symphony, but in the end, maybe if you're breaking that down into smaller assets, like little tones or things that serve as, that maybe that little 3 to 5 second sound that comes from a larger body of work. Is that how you typically approach the creation?
Yes, this is how we work, and don't worry, we don't create a symphony for each brand.
Yeah, that'll get tiring.
But what we are inspired by the example of James Bond as a great example of a sonic identity that lives since 60 years.
Right.
And of course is made out of different ingredients, musical ingredients that you can combine together. So the idea is the same. We create a piece of music, we call it like a sonic DNA. This piece contains already all melodies, ingredients, chords, and riffs, and whatever you need to create new assets out of it. For example, the mnemonic, it's also created out of a sonic DNA. So this is the way we work. And this works until now for all our global clients.
That's amazing. And yeah, James Bond is when you give that example to people, do they understand? Like, yes they're like, oh, the kind of the and then there's those rising sixth. Yep. Exactly. And then there's the romantic theme that I love. Like I just can't. Me and my friend were riffing the other day. He was like, "Man, the James Bond love theme, holy crap! Like so much emotion, so much passion, but all of that goes in to create the James Bond experience." And so that's really good that you have something to reference. And you made a great point about everyone listens to music. Not everybody understands marketing or the fonts or the way a color scheme might make you feel, but everyone listens to music recreationally, I would assume, unless you're some kind of sociopath. And then maybe there's also a place in a business for you. But so let's transition into kind of speaking towards marketers and business owners. What information do you think marketers and business owners fail to hear when it comes to sonic branding?
Fails to hear. So yes, sometimes we had to make the point that sonic branding is not just a sonic logo. This is something very difficult to explain. So the example of James Bond helped us through the years to explain exactly the point of flexibility. I think the information that they fail to hear is a lot about, okay, sonic branding, then I need like a checklist of 4 or 5 things that I have to create, and then I'm done. So what is missing in this piece is that you cannot, it's music, man. It's something that should run like liquid, should go into different parts of your brand, should be shared with other people. So you cannot just go like a menu and just check items and get a toolkit and that's it. So what they miss is sometimes the flexibility and the strategic aspect behind it. And every brand is different because every brand has different moments of truth. So you have to understand, how can I create a sonic like accompaniment for these moments of truth, to create memories, to create memory structures, to create trust around the brand. And it's not always the same in all brands. So when sometimes it's interesting when we of course participate to some pitches, because what they need is prescribed. And then this is a moment where you say, are you sure that this is the right thing for you? Who told you that? So, sometimes I think that marketers need a consultancy before they start thinking about sonic to understand what really matters.
The next question is about jingles and them sort of being thought of as out of date maybe out of touch. It's just like, I remember the jingles from my childhood, but we're not like that. We're a serious business, you know, and I wonder sometimes if that consultancy angle would help marketers realize that the sonic companion, like you were saying, is the kind of quickest way to create an emotional connection. When you're talking about jingles and stuff, and somebody says that's silly, it's sort of out of touch. Like, what's your response to that? And why do you think this ethos has changed? Because in the 50s and 60s, man, you couldn't throw a rock without hitting a jingle. And nowadays, it's a little bit more of the business of like a big insurance company or, you know, a big brand. Like, why do you think? Where do you think this has come from? Where do you see it headed?
Apart from the fact that nowadays you can still hear some jingles from the 50s that you were talking about, right? So there is an aspect of longevity of these jingles. I think there is a mistake judging these things. I think is nothing wrong about the jingles themselves, because whenever you create an emotional association with a brand, and this association is the right one, so it's in line with what the brand stands for, the brand positioning, etc. I think this is right. It doesn't matter how you create it. The problem with jingles sometimes is that jingles have been created for moments that are not happening anymore. If you imagine a jingle used for the last 3 seconds of a commercial, and you have brands that are not doing commercials anymore because they are spending more the media on digital, the question is, when do I hear this jingle, right? Probably never. So I think that the point of a jingle is more the point of flexibility, and there is nothing wrong per se, right, associated with a jingle. The only thing that marketers should ask themselves, if the brand has a jingle, before you drop it, just ask, how can I make this part of an extended sonic journey that works maybe on digital, but also in apps and also in ads, and or how can I modify the jingle? How can take the jingle to something more flexible? This is the right question, not we just drop it because it's old, right?
Great point.
Yeah, and a quick follow-up, and that is an excellent point. But I think too, like, especially with the digital landscape, people are so caught up in these metrics and being able to show, like, how, like, do you ever run into that where, because as from the marketing side, we run into that a lot where people are like, well, what's the ROI going to be on our jingle? Which is weird. But at the same time, like, there's a lot of people who, how do you frame these things and say, like earlier you were discussing about an experience and people having an emotional connection. There's not always a really good way to line that up with some kind of marketing metric. So it almost sounds like you're coming at it from almost a creative, like almost a branding reinvention or something. Like, I'm just kind of curious. It seems to us that we're always trying to push through that, this ad plus this money and this website, blah, blah, blah. And this is a larger thing. I mean, this is an identity. This is something that people can do. Does that, do you ever run up and someone say like, well, when are we going to see this thing pay off? Like, how do you explain to somebody that we're in a different element,
I would say 80% of our clients. So,
yep.
And I think this is important to us. So I think measurability of what we do, I think this is very important, but it's given. You have just to follow a certain process that makes things measurable. If you think about, I don't know, just 2 examples. If you think about Mercedes-Benz, and if you see that we measure the amount of comments about the music used in social triplicated after the introduction of the sonic identity, right? And after the work we do, because we don't create everything here, we work with artists worldwide. We share the sonic DNA of Mercedes with the artists, so we create authentic content, and the people on social media 3 times more than in the past are asking, where's this, can I get this song, where's the title, who is the artist, and whatever. And this is Mercedes, right? So this is measurable because it's engagement. People are watching longer videos. They are staying more on your channel, grabbing more attention. So this is all measurable. Another example is Mastercard. After the introduction of the transaction sound, the level of trust when a consumer pays with sound compared to a scenario without a sound increased by 78%. This is measurable. And also 80% of the customer buying with the sound wants to get back to the homepage where they bought online with the sound instead of going somewhere where there was no sound. So all these metrics are in place. You just need to have a system that measures these metrics and also tracks these metrics across the experience, right?
Right. Wow. Oh my gosh, I love that. So yeah, I mean, you've worked with some of these big names. Let's break into some stories. Can you share like a Cinderella story where you worked with a brand and they got their sound up and running and it made that difference? And then conversely, do you have any horror stories about a brand failing in audio?
So I have many Cinderellas and many horrors. So let's think about just one per each category. So let's take one Cinderella, the latest Cinderella. I think I presented last week in London. This is the Sound of Use, the vaping brand from VAT.
Okay.
This is an interesting story because this is a brand that is not allowed to use conventional communication channels because it's the tobacco sector. So you have a lot of restrictions. So the idea was, how can this Cinderella turn to something that engages people in something that it's different from a typical commercial or a typical ATL environment, right? So, and this is more about activation more than commercials, right? So then we created the sonic DNA of use. We presented it for the first time last week at a conference in London, and this was an amazing feedback from the audience because they said, okay, I get the point. You have something as a brand. The brand can share it with the creative community, letting people use it, creating something out of it. So you are engaging emotionally with your target group, which is the creative class, but you are in a restrictive space. So you use sound as a vehicle to engage people in your space without using the typical top-down communication. So I think this is a Cinderella story that turned out to be, good for sound.
Right.
And horror stories, of course, not from our clients, but for some other clients. I have a lot of these horror stories. I don't know.
Break into it. I got the popcorn ready.
It could totally be something where you just saw a commercial somewhere or heard something and was like, that does not go with that.
No. I mean, something more. I have, okay, let's talk about one horror story about something that, the agency doesn't exist anymore. So it's something that is kind of in the intersection between what I can say and what I think. So, for example, the Intel Sonic logo. Go back, and if you imagine that is one of the most known Sonic logos in the world, launched in the early 90s.
Yep.
And if you ask people, Sonic branding, like Intel. So, and everybody knows that, right?
Yep.
But if you look back so many years, almost 30 years, the brand was not able until now to create something out of this one element. So this Sonic logo could be used in the brand experiences, could be used in a broader context like a Sonic DNA that gives the brand more flexibility to make this hearable at different touch points, in different devices, in different applications and whatever. This just didn't happen because it was so successful and so popular that there was no necessity to do that. But when the necessity came, because Intel is creating lots of content on digital and everywhere, then it's too late. Then you have to, recreate a more flexible strategy that goes beyond just this one Sonic logo that everybody know, right? But at the end, it's just one element. So I think this is a story maybe to be continued.
Well, and what's another sort of like Paul was saying, like just something that just doesn't sound right, or I think You're already way into the weeds because you know how the sausage is made, and you know how that sausage needs to have an application and strategic importance that takes it just away from just being that one thing. Is there another example that you can share, maybe just to outline what brands shouldn't be doing with sound? Or
Well, I think there are a couple of new sonic brands that have no distinction.
Interesting.
So, and I think the differentiations is a really important point. If you look at some new sonic brands, so things created in the last 12 months, for example, or 20 months.
Yep.
So recent work, and with the understanding of sonic branding today, and having something that is so generic that you cannot just close your eyes and distinguish the brand or think, oh, this is interesting, this is different, this, I didn't
Right.
expect this in this sector. This sometimes doesn't happen. I have a couple of latest examples of this work. So
yes, please.
Yeah.
Do you have them, or do you don't want to name names? And I'm cool with that.
No, I don't want to name them, but I think the two aspects, the strategic aspect, and
Right.
doing something that is more creating a friction, unexpected, and differentiation. I think this is something that should be always part of the creative goal. And if you look back at the latest things launched in the last 12 months with global brands, sometimes was not the case.
Interesting. Love that. So, go ahead, Paul. No, you do it.
No, no, okay.
No,
I was just going to say.
no.
Do you want to?
No, we'll have a meeting. Buddy? Yep.
Okay. HR is in trouble again. Okay, so if you had one piece of advice when it comes to sonic branding and audible marketing, like we've heard the horror story, and you keep saying no distinction. So I'm kind of curious about that one a little bit. But one piece of advice when it comes to all this to give to our listeners, what would that be?
One piece. Yeah. I think the point of flexibility and authenticity. I think before you talk to procurement, put maybe the flexibility and the authenticity on the top of the agenda, because this is, as you said, Jacob, before, this is identity work.
Right.
Don't focus on a campaign. You are not creating something that is supposed to be offline after 3 months. You are creating something that goes for years. When we create our ideal, and I know with the word today is not normal, but our ideal is we create for the eternity, right? In the moment where you create a sonic identity that was not there before. So my piece of advice is think about authenticity and flexibility, merge this together and create a piece of identity that can stay for longer. And don't let other people write down what you really need, but first go into this space and inspect these kind of categories.
Love that.
Nice. So just a quick follow on that. When you're talking about creating this DNA for these brands, and you use the example of the James Bond music, the 007 theme, do you imagine, like, and this is a little technical, but do you imagine, like, how would this sound on a solo guitar, or how would this sound with a 6-piece chamber thing? Like, do you kind of envision this sort of a theme in these different ways and how they could use that?
I will reveal something, and it doesn't matter because all competitors are copying us since already maybe 2-3 years. So the concept of sonic DNA has been trademarked by AMP years ago. So this is something that we just invented. But I tell you also another detail about that. When we create a sonic DNA, we play it, of course, in different ways, and so that the people in branding and marketing can understand what it's all about. But there is one version of the DNA. We call it the Elton John version of the DNA. And this is when Elton John would go on stage and say, now I play the DNA of brand XY, right? So, and then this is just a piano version, but played like Elton John would play it. So with heavy fingers on an electric piano on stage, emphasizing the energy and the body of the composition itself without anything else. And this is like the revelation moment where you understand the essence of what we are creating before you think about hip hop or whatever we can generate out of it. The Elton John finger version is one important adaptation.
I love that. And then, so I also have another follow-up. Sound is being experienced on so many different types of speakers. Like, we have these nice headphones. Do you, when you create a sonic identity, you know, just like when we're producing music, you listen to it in your car, you listen to it on a boom box, you know, do you sort of preview those things to say this is popping out of a phone and it's in your face, you know, or this is coming out of the point of sale, you know, like, do you test for where those things are going to be applied?
Yes, we do audio tests, of course, but we don't do it for the DNA itself. We do it for the assets that we create afterwards.
Right.
So we do different audio tests depending on the asset. We create a lot of UX UI sounds, and also for example, in the past we created user interface sounds for a surgery device. So we tested these devices with the medical company that created the devices in a testing environment. So we do all these kind of tests which are required by the single implementation, right?
Well, and that sparks some questions. There may be a lot of competing sounds. You have the heart monitor going. You have maybe some ambient air conditioning. When you do test those things, do you test them in situ? Like this was how it would be experienced in a noisy store.
Yes, we test these things in situations. We did also, for example, for Mercedes-Benz 2 years ago, a neuroscience test in the car for some sounds. So you have to try to simulate the real experience right. to have, you know, this kind of situation. And sometimes we simulate it for the client. When we present the test, is also not so easy, right? So to showcase how we test it, so we simulate the situations as well for the client.
God, that's beautiful. Oh,
that is so cool.
Nothing so cool. Nothing left on the floor. Michele's picking it all up, making it a dream. And I love that you've taken your experience as a musician and brought it into this world where people are desperate to be unique, to have an authentic touch. And they're so lucky to have somebody like you that's helping them build those things, test those things, and sort of show the emotional component of what they're working with, because you can be so myopic when you're a business owner. And exactly. Music is this thing that just sort of opens it up. And I just think big fans of you. And we can't thank you enough for being on the show, but people want to learn more about you. They want to connect online with you. How can they do that and learn more about AMP, Michele?
So it's easy. Just go on our homepage, ampsoundbranding.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, and AMP is on LinkedIn, also with AMP Sound Branding. Just reach out. We appreciate every single conversation around this topic. We are passionate.
Time for a sound quiz.
What is your favorite sound in the world?
My favorite sound in the world. I had this question because we created beautiful pieces of art in the office illustrating this sound graphically. So one of my favorite sound is the sound of clams when they open in olive oil. This kind of, you know, and this is because it's a Pavlov reflex, because when I hear this sound, I think that in 10 minutes I will eat spaghetti vongole. So it's creating a high expectation.
I love that. And conversely, what is your least favorite sound in the world?
The least favorite sound in the world is probably, I don't know, a strong wind.
Wind.
That covers everything else.
Ugh, it is the worst. Wind is such a bother. I totally agree. And now we're going to play a quick round of Guess That Sound. We're going to play 3 sounds, and you're going to have to guess what they are. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, here we go. Here's the first one. Who knows?
Kind of
Yes,
a
who
layup
knows?
for you.
Yes, I just paid with MasterCard.
Yes, perfect,
Nice.
perfect. Okay, here's the next one.
Again?
You want to hear it again?
It sounds very 8-bit. It's 8-bit. It's a video game sound.
Yes, and it features a plumber.
Oh, it's a Super Mario sound.
Yes,
Nice,
it's the
nice.
coin.
Yeah.
I gave it away, but you were right
Fantastic.
there.
Yes.
Ah, all right. Here's the last one, and this may tax you. So let's just see.
Oh,
We want it one more time.
yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I can get maybe a telephone joker with Chris. I don't know, Chris.
Yeah, phone a friend.
It's phone a friend.
It sounds like a chainsaw somehow. I don't know.
Well, it's the siren from the Ghostbusters Ectomobile. Oh, well, you know, I didn't know, and I know you're Mr. International over there, so I was wondering what we're going to do to, like, catch it. I looked up German jingles from the 50s, and I was like, I don't know if that's going to be, are we going to know that, even if you get it right?
No, but now I recognize it. I didn't watch the movie since a long time. So yeah, I get it.
Sounds Like Marketing is a production of Audio Content Lab. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you find your podcasts, and follow Audio Content Lab for the latest in sound marketing advice. Until next time. Audio Content Lab.